Just checking, making sure we have audio. Hi guys, good morning. It's Wednesday morning, which means it's Real Estate Chat with me, Jennifer Ho. We have a very special guest. Over here is a very dear friend of mine, a very, very good seasoned realtor with Douglas Elliman. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Bill Martin with Douglas Elliman in New York City and in Greenwich, Connecticut. Jennifer and I have worked together for several years now, and she asked me kindly to give my opinion on what's going on in the New York City real estate market in general, and to also touch on a few specific topics regarding what a land lease building is in New York, which many of our viewers are not familiar with, especially some of our viewers from overseas who are not familiar with the different types of properties that one can buy in New York City. Many people from the UK are familiar with these type of land lease purchases, but it's something more uncommon here in the US. And New York City is one of the few cities in the US that do have land lease properties.
So thank you for bringing that up. So for all of you viewers out there, as you know, I talked about real estate, and the thing is, like, I get so many people asking about the Manhattan market and everything. And Bill and I were just talking earlier before the show, and I was discussing, because one of my friends just bought her son a one-bedroom apartment at Battery Park, and they were so excited. They only spent $600,000 on a one-bedroom, which is unheard of. I was just like, really? So what's the catch? And they said it was, I miss you, Arpine. And the catch was, it's not really a catch, which is why I want Bill to explain. I did not know that there was such a thing as a land lease in New York City. I knew that we have them. It's very common in the UK, but never in New York City.
Right.
So I thought it was just Battery Park. I thought it was just one building. It turns out it's not.
Sure. Well, you know, back in the late 70s, early 80s, when Battery Park City was developed, there was basically certain type of bonds and loans that the city made to the developers of that area, and the city basically owns the land, and the developers were allowed to build upon it. So in turn, there is what's called a ground rent, and that ground rent is the additional monies that have to be added to the maintenance of those units. Therefore, those units carry a lower intrinsic value because it's a higher cost to carry. Now, there's also some tax structure implicated into Battery Park City in particular, which makes it even more unique to the city as a whole. But right now, what I'd like to explain to our viewers is, what is a land lease building?
Yes.
And very simply, what it means is that the land that the building sits upon is not owned by the building itself. Now, most of these buildings are co-ops, cooperatives, which means that they are not real property, but you're owning shares of a corporation that owns the actual building. And you are given a proprietary lease for the unit that you are purchasing, okay? And those shares those representative number of shares are assigned to that particular unit. Okay, so there is general maintenance to basically run the building for the employees, the superintendent, the doorman, the porter, to do all of the maintenance in the building, for the fuel and electric costs of the building. Those are all what we would call general maintenance costs. Okay, typically in a luxury style co-op, they normally don't exceed more than $2 per square foot on average. So in a land lease building, there's an additional component because the co-op corporation doesn't own the land. It's owned by a third party, and that third party, normally it's an individual or a family trust that's owned the land for many decades, and it's a real long-term investment for these people. So the land leases are generally up to 99 years in length.
It's funny you just said that. Someone just messaged me like, wait, how long is the land lease? Is it like
Right.
5 years, 10 years?
No.
She just answered it.
No.
Yep, it's 99 years. So don't worry, you don't have to move like 5 years later.
Right. Now, what they do is as you're getting closer to the expiration date of that land lease, let's say you might have even 25, 30 years before it expires, the board of managers of the building will negotiate with the land lease holder to extend the terms of the lease agreement and push it out. They can push it out another 50 years, 75 years, whatever it might be. I've had experience in selling many different land lease co-ops in New York City, and each building works differently according to how their specific land lease is set up with the owners of the land.
So the reason I bring this up, because, you know, my friend did buy one, but what was fascinating about, because I was like, where in the world did you find $600,000 for a one bedroom overlooking the water? They had water views. And then she said something like, yeah, it was really nice, but with all the fees that's attached to it, it's almost renting. I think her fees were like maybe $3,000-$4,000
Sure.
on top of the mortgage. And she says, like, I don't even know if it's worth it. But I said, well, the difference between renting and actually owning it, land lease or not, is that $4,000 is towards an asset which you could sell in the future. So what do you think about people asking, like, okay, so why am I going to buy a land lease, or like a co-op that's on a land lease? Is there really value to it for resale, for example?
Well, that is a very good question, and it's a very tricky question to answer. Yeah. The majority of people do not like land lease properties for the one reason in that the maintenance fees or land lease rent charges go up exponentially. And they're, in most cases, predetermined for, let's say, 5-year forward periods, and they keep changing.
That's not bad though. I thought it would be every year.
No, but they have increases each year. So
okay.
Let's say for the next 5 years, if today was a reset date, you would know that, okay, for the next 5 years, our building is going to pay, you know, A, B, C, D of the next following 5 years.
And then they'll divide.
But then at the end of the 5-year period, what they do is normally they will reevaluate what the value of the land is based on independent appraisers. And then they will come back to the board and they will sort of negotiate what the fees are that they're going to pay going forward for the next 5-year period. But let me give you an example of why it may or may not work for everybody. You will buy a similar apartment for a much lower price than if it was in a traditional non-land lease building. But your lower purchase price will come with the caveat of basically having somewhat of an unknown of what your carrying costs will be going forward. And that can be alarming to a lot of people, especially somebody who doesn't know how long they want to hold the property for. So I'll give an example. I had a land lease property that I listed last spring, and this was a gentleman who purchased the property. It was a very beautiful 2-bedroom, fully renovated apartment on the Upper East Side. And the property also had a very large outdoor terrace. He had paid $1.7 million for it about 8.5 years ago. We listed the apartment at $1.2 million. So you're saying, well, that's a huge, huge loss in such a short period of time when the general market has gone up in that period if you purchased any other type of apartment, whether it be a co-op or a condo. So the problem there is that the maintenance, which is the total maintenance, including the ground rent, went from just under $4,000 per month when he first purchased it to now, which was over $6,000 a month. And for that unit, that was a lot of money. You could get a traditional co-op without a land lease of the same size, caliber, location for probably $2,800, $2,900 a month in your maintenance costs. So you're paying about double.
Yeah.
in your carrying
Is
costs.
that tax deductible though?
No, it's not. It is not. There's a certain portion of the underlying mortgage of the building that's tax deductible, but that whole ground rent is not tax deductible, and there are very strict limits on the tax deductibility that one can have in Manhattan now because of the limitations that were imposed several years ago.
So for all of you, what would you recommend for people out, like buyers out there who are still thinking of moving to New York City? If that's the case, if I come to you and say, hey Bill, I'm thinking of purchasing something in New York City, would I be better off buying something that's more expensive as long as it's not in a land lease? Because
Correct.
For me, that would make more sense because at least my mortgage is tax deductible. And at least I know my common charges is not going to go up significantly or like every year. It will, but not as much.
Right.
So is that what you would recommend?
Yes, I would recommend purchasing a co-op right now if you have the assets to show to be accepted by a board, because it's a very stringent process of analyzing your financials. It's not like a condo where if you can write a check, you can be accepted to the condo. With a co-op, it's a very strict vetting process, and you can be turned down if you don't have enough assets or liquidity, and it's a very lengthy process, and it can take anywhere up to 60 days to even get an approval from a board.
Are there condos actually in New York City, or is it mostly co-op? I heard New York City is mostly co-op.
No, that's actually not true. There's only...
See, this is why we need Bill.
There's approximately 25% of all the buildings in New York City are co-ops. Everything else is a condo or private residence, like a townhouse.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but another question that we had was, I've spoken with a lot of moms, like parents out there, who were asking, okay, my child is about to start working in New York City, and we really want to purchase something because the rent right now is what, $4,000, like $3,000-$4,000, depending on where you are.
For a typical one bedroom, you're talking about in the neighborhood of $4,000 for a nice building. It doesn't even have to be super high-end neighborhood.
It's just like, you're right.
You can pay a lot more than that, but typically we're talking about renting $4,000 a month for a one bedroom, closer to $3,000 or a little less for a studio, in some of the fringe neighborhoods. Now, if somebody is looking to purchase a property sort of as an investment for their child to live in while they're getting established, you might want to go to more of the outlying areas. It doesn't have to be a super prime area. It could be northern Manhattan. It could be the east side or lower east side. There's a lot of areas that still do have some value.
See, my generation, when we had an apartment in New York City, back then, Upper West Side and Upper East Side is the place to go.
Sure.
It's like the Greenwich in Connecticut,
well,
but now
young people don't
they don't want to go there
to those areas anymore. They want to be further downtown,
Alphabet City,
more nightlife, and it's a little bit more vibrant. But you can also see right now that there's a tremendous amount of new development going up on the Upper East and Upper West with the most amazing buildings. And by the way, all the new development, they're all condominiums. That people don't build co-ops anymore. And that's important to know. And these are very expensive buildings. The price per square foot is insane. But, as a general trend, since the pandemic started, we had seen prices in Manhattan trend lower, and we saw basically a lot of inventory on the market, and we still do have a lot of inventory on the market. Pricing is much softer now than it had been before, and it's actually a great time to purchase if you want to make an investment. Even though interest rates are very high right now, in relation to where they've been many years ago,
it was like 16%.
Yeah, you have people. We've all been spoiled in the past 10 years or so with low interest rates, so we've gotten used to that. But like I say, marry the apartment and date the rate. Because
Yes.
you could always change the rate when rates come down. You could always refinance.
Yeah.
So if you have to stick with a higher rate for a few years, not a problem. You could always do a refi and get a better rate. That's one of the reasons why there is such low inventory right now in Connecticut, is because so many people have moved to Connecticut
Yes.
during the pandemic, and they gobbled up all the inventory. And the people that are still here and happy to be here, they don't want to sell, because where are they going to go and buy at a higher interest rate?
Yes.
Maybe double of what they already have on their mortgage right now. So they're happy staying put where they are with their current mortgage. And that definitely has caused a lot of people to rethink selling their property.
But what they don't realize, though, is that right now, because Manhattan has softened, like in prices, it's really now a good time to purchase in Manhattan. Because a year or two from now, market's going to go back up. And then what's going to happen? You're going to start running after the price again,
Right.
which is really not a good idea. And the thing is that I always say, like, this is like just a conversation I had with one of the parents that I know from Jersey, is that her daughter got a really big job in the city, and they were looking at a 1-bedroom, but it was $6,000 because where all the young kids are. And I remember telling her, it's like, $6,000, that's a house you could purchase. And I said, why don't you just find her something in the Upper West Side, because it has softened, and have your child commute like everyone else. Right. And then they did end up purchasing. And then she messaged me after the fact, and she says, you know what? Thank you for convincing me to buy something, because now the child ended up liking where she is, because then it doesn't get too crazy. Like after working all day, she just wants something that's quiet enough, but still being able to live in the city.
Rental prices are still very high in Manhattan right now. They're starting to soften. We are definitely seeing that. But the reason that they've been so high is because people have been renting as an alternative to purchasing for the past couple of years. And that's forced more people into rentals.
Well, rentals, sorry, didn't mean to, but the thing was, rentals during COVID, the landlords were giving the apartments away.
That's because people were fleeing the city in droves. There was an exodus from the city to the suburban markets. People were leaving, they were just breaking leases, they were just running out of the city because they felt like they were caged rats and, they couldn't go anywhere. And then anytime we had any availability up here in Connecticut or Westchester, it was a feeding frenzy.
Yeah.
People were bidding each other, like crazy to get into these properties. It just didn't matter. The pricing didn't matter what price you put on a house. It was bid up from that point in a matter of hours. It was just crazy. But look, you have to look forward.
Yes.
What do you think is going to happen in the next couple of years? It's a great time to invest in the city right now.
I agree.
Because you're getting good value for the dollar. And once interest rates do come down, prices will start to rise again. Yeah. You can refinance if you do have a mortgage. And as long as you buy in a good neighborhood, in a building with good financials that doesn't have problems, always look into the history and make sure you have a good real estate attorney to guide you, because that's extremely important in the city, even more so than in a suburban market, because the real estate attorney in the city has to look into the history of the building, which we don't do in our suburban markets.
So, just to let you guys know, hiring an agent is, you have to hire an agent if you're buying a house. But the thing is, like what a lot of you have to realize, hey Jana, nice to see you. So the thing is, what you have to realize, when you're hiring an agent, you have to make sure you hire an experienced agent that knows what they're doing. I, for example, am licensed in both New York and Connecticut, but I do not know the Manhattan market at all. And it would not be in my client's best interest if I tell them, hey, I am going to represent you in New York City. I do not do that because it's not good for your client. The reason I brought Bill as my guest is, one, he is a very seasoned agent. And not only that, he knows Manhattan market very well. And to be honest with you, we were not planning to talk about land lease until I just brought it up. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know about you guys, is like, I really did not know that there was such a thing as land lease. And after talking to you, it really, because the thing is, like, what happened to my friend was when they bought that land lease in Battery Park, all they saw was the price was $600,000, water views. They really never bothered asking everything else. And so by the time the closing day happened, then they read the fine print and then they said, like, how much am I paying?
Well, this is why it pays to work with a seasoned professional that knows the market,
Yes.
that can explain to you what to do, how to do it, and what to avoid. And most importantly, in New York, there's a lot of nuances between different types of buildings, different co-ops. You have to know your market. You have to know your neighborhood.
Yes.
Every building has somewhat different rules and regulations that someone needs to abide by and have qualifications to meet in order to be accepted, especially in some of these co-ops that have more restrictive regulations. So it's a waste of their time to try to apply in a building and go through hours and hours and hours of paperwork and interviews and everything like that, only to be rejected because you don't qualify. We as professionals know what someone will need in a specific building in order to qualify. And if we don't have experience in that specific building, we will find out exactly what we need to find out before we even bring you there.
It's interesting also, you said earlier that having the right attorney does make a difference. This is also one of the things that's very important if you're purchasing a home. I know a lot of us knows a lot of agents. We're either related to them or friends with them. And I know a lot of us know or related to attorneys, real estate attorneys. But one thing I have to really stress on to all of you home buyers out there, and even sellers actually, is that you need to get a local attorney. Because an attorney that serves Westchester County, for example, even that's New York, it's very different than being a real estate attorney in Manhattan. Because you said already earlier, there are things that you're supposed to check.
Yes.
That most attorneys won't.
Yes, you have to review the board minutes for the building. You have to find out if there are any fines or regulations that are outstanding on that building. There's a plethora of information that needs to be provided to an attorney, and a real New York City attorney that focuses solely on real estate is who you really need to work with. Not just my local attorney, from Westchester, who could also do a closing down in the city. That doesn't work.
That's a big no-no. I have horror stories of sellers now who did not use a local attorney, found out after the fact that part of their property has now been encroached and they no longer own it. Apparently it was never theirs to begin with and they didn't catch it.
That happens.
So thank you so much, Bill. To wrap it up, what would you advise all the viewers out there who are either thinking of rent or to buy? First of all, what would you recommend?
I always recommend purchasing over renting, because why are you making somebody else rich by lining their pockets with your monthly rent? You might as well take the risk yourself in purchasing something, at least having a long-term asset that over history we've known to appreciate. Real estate has been one of the best investments for anybody.
Yes.
Going back for over 100 years. So I think that that's your best bet. If you only want to be someplace for a very short period of time, like around a year, then renting is the way to go until you understand what you're going to be doing.
Where you want to be.
Exactly. If you're new to the city and may want to feel out what neighborhoods you like, rent in the neighborhood that you think you might want to live in, and then see what happens within the next year. I think that's always a smart thing to do, is to test the waters before you dive in head first.
And then the thing is, this is what I got a lot of questions when they knew you were coming. If I want to purchase a unit in New York City, do I have to have millions of dollars? Are there anything under $1 million? Or
absolutely, there's plenty of inventory under $1 million. You just have to work with the right people to find the right properties, and I think that there's something for everybody.
Yeah.
And even though might not be living in Midtown Manhattan, you could still live in Manhattan on some of the outer edges of the city that are a little bit more affordable.
So that's good to know, guys, because a lot of you have asked me this, like, oh, New York City is only for gazillionaires, and like, no, when I told them, no, you could actually get a 1-bedroom for under $1 million, and they didn't believe me. So here we are, the one, like Bill, who knows New York City very well, you heard it from him. So any other parting words for anyone out there who is looking to buy or just moving in the city? Or, oh, by the way, sorry, I forgot. You don't just cover New York City, guys. He also covers Connecticut.
Yes, I do Connecticut, just like Jennifer, as well as all of Westchester County. And we cover all of Connecticut, the entire state, not just the Greenwich area. So if you or any of your friends or family want to explore Connecticut or the city or other suburban areas in Westchester, feel free to give us a call. We'd love to speak to you, answer any questions that you might have. If you want to consult with me about anything in New York City, I'm always available. And Jennifer has my contact information.
And it would be on the screen. And I highly recommend this episode. It's not just for buyers out there. To all of you homeowners in Manhattan, again, you do not just want to pick a famous realtor or someone. You have to hire someone that really knows what they're doing, that really knows your building. Because the last thing you want as a homeowner selling your house is to be represented by someone who are giving wrong information about your unit.
That's right. Knowledge is power. Just remember that. It's the most important thing.
Anyway, is there anything else you want to... Sorry, I keep telling him that, but it's just like, this thing just keeps going.
No, I really appreciate you inviting me to speak with your viewers today. And if anyone has any further questions, be in touch with us by phone or email. We'll be happy to get back to you right away.
Absolutely. It would be good if you put it in the comment page, but I know a lot of you are very shy putting the comments because you feel like others would judge you. They won't. You'll be surprised. I get the same question from 5 different people in like DMing me because they did not want to post it in the comment page. But whatever you feel comfortable with, thank you so much, Bill, for taking the time. That has been so much. He was so prepared, guys. Look at this. But we got that land-lease, I think, was very good that we talked about.
I think it's important to know.
Because a lot of people didn't know. Well, thank you again. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
See you next week. Thank you.